What's up guys, it's Johnny Candido of Candido Training HQ. Today's video is going to be on a very common and important issue to address, and that is lower back rounding during the deadlift. Now I already have a general deadlift tutorial video called How to Deadlift with Perfect Form, so watch that if you haven't seen that already. However, this video is going to get more into the specifics. This is more for someone who's already seen that video, already knows the basic principles and steps involved, but for some reason it just doesn't seem to work when they try to apply it, either when the weight gets heavy, their lower back rounds, or they just can't get into the proper positions to begin with. I have 4 main points to help you address this issue. The first one is to simply increase your flexibility. And this is very important because if your hamstrings aren't mobile enough, if you're not flexible enough, you simply cannot get into the starting position without your lower back being rounded. There are a number of ways to increase your hamstring mobility. You can just look up some traditional static stretches, and those will be effective, especially if you're a beginner, but I also recommend that you do incorporate some dynamic movements as well. And personally, I believe that combining mobility work and adding some resistance can be very beneficial when it comes to translating it to the actual lifts. Personally, my favorite is the stiff-legged med ball one-leg deadlift. Now I know that sounds very random, but it actually is a very effective movement. This can be a great movement because you're ensuring that you're getting a good stretch on the hamstrings of each leg individually, and you also have to keep proper balance. See, that's a big issue when it comes to deadlifting as well. This allows you to train the mobility aspect, but also keeping the weight on your heels. Also, since you are using a med ball, if you're in a proper facility, you can throw the ball in the air, so not only are you stretching your hamstrings, but you're explosively contracting them as well. Okay, my second point is to slightly widen your stance. See, a lot of times people have such a narrow stance where it's more just quad and lower back, but they can't seem to contract their glutes out of the starting position. So by slightly widening your stance, it allows you to keep the bar a little bit closer to you, to keep your weight on your heels, and to get better recruitment out of your glutes. I also recommend that you take a grip that's as narrow as possible with this slightly wider stance. So essentially your knees and elbows will be slightly touching. I also want to point out that having a narrow stance is not wrong, and many lifters do this correctly and maintain proper form. But this video is for specific modifications for someone who does have that issue of lower back rounding. Another benefit to using a slightly wider stance is that it makes it a bit easier in terms of the flexibility required to get into the proper starting position. So this is connected to the first issue. However, I don't want you to just use this as a crutch so you don't address the problem of your flexibility. So I want you to use this slightly wider stance and then also work on your flexibility on the side. Alright, my third point to prevent lower back rounding during the deadlift is to simply increase your squat and general leg strength. And I see people do the opposite of this all the time. They notice that their lower back is rounding, so what they do after deadlifts is they do a bunch of lower back accessory exercises. And the reason why this can become a problem is you have to think, why is your lower back rounding in the first place? When your form breaks down, your body is getting into the position in which it's the strongest. So it actually means that you have weak glutes, hamstrings, and quads if now you're getting into a position where you're using more of your lower back. It's because your lower back is the strongest body part in the movement. So that's why I strongly recommend that you focus on strengthening your glutes and your entire lower body to help prevent this issue. And if you look at the elite powerlifters who are able to maintain a fairly neutral spine even during their max deadlifts, what you'll notice is they almost always have an extremely impressive squat as well. Whereas if you look at some of the deadlift specialists who maybe deadlift 150, maybe even 200 pounds more than they squat, typically they'll use a rounded back position. Alright, my last piece of advice to prevent lower back rounding during the deadlift is to incorporate pause deadlifts. And this is something that is extremely effective. What I want you to do is when you deadlift to pause right after breaking the weight off the floor. And this forces you to maintain the proper positioning, because it's very difficult to do this with a rounded back. You have to focus on keeping tension on your glutes to hold that position right off the floor. So now you're both increasing the time under tension on the muscles required to pull with a straight back in proper form, but you're also working the skill of the lift as well. Oftentimes I see people who are strong, who are flexible, but just can't seem to put it together for a specific lift. And that's just because they're not coordinated with that specific movement. You need to learn the skill of each movement. And pause deadlifts are just a great tool for doing just that. This is why pause deadlifts are in my novice program. They allow you to use lighter weights, but still train with intensity and force you to use proper form. Alright guys, so that's it. This was some more in-depth information on how to prevent lower back rounding during the deadlift. I hope this was helpful. Make sure to like the video to support the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks for watching, guys. Peace.
100 miles an hour running when I hit the ground. Thoughts moving through my head at the speed of sound. I pray, my prayers make it through the cloud.